Hello everyone and welcome. This year especially I had weeks when I did not know what to create. I either took a break, showed you my old cards, or I did coloring or color swatching or both. I love doing that, but I needed to do something else. So what do I do when I'm creatively stuck? If you would like to skip through this, there are chapters in the description. So what do? I go on Pinterest, Instagram too, but mainly Pinterest. You might have different platform that you use, but I follow lots of card makers through their blogs, and if I like something, I save it to a Pinterest board. If you have Pinterest, I will leave the link to this board in the description. And then I scroll through this board or just go through my feed just to see if something inspires me. Often I actually have something in mind I want to do, just the card design is not there. And that's how today's card idea came about. I wanted to test if I can print over distress ink backgrounds. And then I stumbled across these cards. I also had a few digital stamps in mind that I could use. This is the first card I stumbled across, and on Pinterest, when you scroll down below the image, you can find inspirations that are very similar. And that's how I found the second card design. I was only going to create these two, but then I saw this card. I love circles, so I wanted to give it a try. By the way, in the description you will find the links to the original cards. So let's make the cards. First, I needed to create the backgrounds. Let's start with my first inspiration. It's from Ellen Hudson. They created two vertical stripes, blending two inks, swapping the colors on each stripe. I started by masking the stripes, first with the one on the right. I used a washi and I extended it on the left side just in case I go over. The number one way not to copy other designs completely is to change colors. So I decided to use greens. I used the Distress Inks Shabby Shutters and Cracked Pistachio. The Shabby Shutters I used at the top of the stripe and the Cracked Pistachio at the bottom, blending them in the middle. I applied 2 layers, I thought that was enough, and then I moved the washi for the second stripe. By the way, to make sure I don't tear up the paper when removing a washi or a masking tape, I use my heat tool and heat up the tape a bit. And when I remove it, I am pulling away from the cardstock. I swapped the washi off camera and started blending the inks for the second stripe. I changed the order of the colors just like they did on the original card. I started with the Cracked Pistachio at the top and Shabby Shutters at the bottom. I had quite a few streaks here. I'm using a cardstock from the company House of Card and Paper. Not a bad cardstock, but I wanted to avoid the streaks, so I swapped the cardstock for the other two backgrounds. I finished the blending on the first card, and here is the background without the tape. Let's look quickly at the original card and the image that they used. As you see, I needed a flower and a greeting. All the images I'm using in this video I downloaded from the website freepik.com. Links will be in the description. I thought using a tulip, but it's a little bit late for tulips, so I found this image with sunflowers. If you don't want to use it as it is shown here, you will need a software like Affinity Photo, Affinity Designer, or Photoshop, and so on, because you will be able to download the EPS file and make adjustments to the image or remove certain parts. I have the Affinity Photo and Affinity Designer, and when you open the EPS file, it will have multiple layers. And here, when I scrolled to the bottom, I was able to remove the rectangle. I also like to group the layers for the flower, and then I copied the image and I pasted it to a document that is in the size of my card. Here I needed to align the flower over the lines I created with the Distress Inks, and I also decided to print the greeting, which needed to be aligned perfectly along the lines. So what did I do? I took a photo of the background with the Distress Inks, and I inserted the photo inside of my file. I adjusted it so it fits the size, and then I adjusted the flower and lastly the greeting. Then I removed the background and printed the image. I will show you the finished card at the end of the video. Now let's move to the second background. The card inspiration is from the blog Mindy Again Design. The blog post was, I believe, about blending inks, and this is the card that inspired me. Similar to previous one, just with a rectangular background. As I mentioned, I used a different cardstock. I used this watercolor paper from Florence, and it was much better. To create the smaller rectangle, I used a washi. The washi was too narrow, so I placed two next to each other. And then I started blending. Again, I used different colors. From top to bottom, I used the Distress Inks Abandoned Coral, Picked Raspberry, and Shaded Lilac. I really love this color combo. The inks blended very nicely. Here is the finished background. For the origin card, they used this very pretty stamp from Gina K, which costs $23. For me, that's way too much. No thank you. I rather use this free image from FreePic. The image has a blue background, so I removed it in the Affinity software, and I also rotated it 90 degrees because I wanted to make a vertical card. And then I copied it to my document that is in the size of my card. It was okay, but it was a bit too wide and a bit too short. The size I'm using here is A6, which is slimmer and taller than the US A2 size. If you're using that size, that image should work. So to make it fit, I played with it a bit. I moved some of the items, the branches, some of them I made bigger, some of them I made smaller, and some of them I slightly erased. And this was my final image. I sent it to my printer and printed it out. By the way, I have a video where I talk about digital stamps and how to print them onto a cardstock. I also have a video where I talk about digital stamps and how to get them onto a cardstock if your printer prints only on a printer paper. Originally, I planned making only these two cards, but then I saw this card. It's from the blog Desert Diva. She used a stencil with dots. I only have one stencil with smaller dots, which I also used, but I needed a stencil with different sizes. So I created them using a cardstock and circle dies and one with a paper punch. You can use acetate, but cardstock is easier to die cut. I placed the stencil on top of my cardstock, starting with the biggest one, and I started blending. I used blue Distress Inks, the Mermaid Lagoon, and Salty Ocean. The placement of the small circles was very random. I didn't have any plan. I was changing between them, I was changing between the colors. I wasn't really a huge fan of the smaller ones that I created with a paper punch. So I brought in my only dot stencil and I masked it off with a washi and added a few of those dots. It looked a bit crazy, but once I added the image, it looked way better. So here is the image. I picked this rose, but there are plenty other images that you can choose from. With many, you can use them as they are. You don't need to do any adjustments. Here I also removed the background from the image, and then when I copied it to my card size, I adjusted it so it fits the background with the dots. I didn't do any other changes. I just adjusted the size and the placement. I also added a greeting. I used simple "just for you." And then I was ready to print. Now let me show you the finished cards. Here is the first one. I can't believe that the greeting is exactly on the line. The image is also really nice. I think it fits really nicely. Here is the second card. I really love the image. I will be using it for coloring as well sometime in the future. And I love the color combo. For the greeting, I picked a banner that says "With Love," which I heat embossed on a black cardstock and I fussy cut it. And here is the third card. With each of the cards, I was crossing my fingers that it prints correctly over the Distress Ink backgrounds, and here it was also exact. I had no problems with printing. With the first two backgrounds I printed after a few days, but this one I printed an hour or two after the blending. I hope you enjoyed this video. Let me know which card you like the best, And I hope I inspired you not to give up if you don't have the exact supplies. Where is a will, there is a way. I have 2 videos for you can watch. One is about digital stamps and how you can use them and print them onto a cardstock. And the other one is how to print them using a cheap printer. Thank you all so much for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in my next video.